Hi there, this is Venkat Subramaniam. I want to talk about forcing good habits. Have you in the past had difficulty throwing out some bad practices or bringing in some good practices? Well, I certainly have. For decades, I've struggled to really throw out bad practices and also to be able to adapt some good practices. What I want to talk about today with you is how I changed and how I improved over the years. And hopefully that helps you as well along the way. Well, we're all smart people. We continuously learn. So why can't we just learn our way out of changing practices? Well, as it turns out, the most difficult things to learn aren't the ones that add to our knowledge. We're always thirsty to really acquire new knowledge. But the ones that are really hard are the ones that demand change to our habits and behaviors. Because changing habits and behaviors requires a lot more than simply just learning something new or something different. Well, I'm a programmer and I spend a lot of time with a lot of people who are programmers. What I'm talking about here is not specific to programming, but it is simply related. Well, after all, programming and life is not just disjoint. We programmers live our lives and we learn a great deal from our lives and apply to programming. And I, for sure, take things from programming and apply to living as well. Well, I was recently observing a group of programmers. They had taken years to learn programming, but in the meantime, they've also acquired some really terrible programming practices. And I realized at the time observing them that we cannot improve our coding style without explicitly observing and making effort to change our coding habits. So as it turns out, we are creatures of habits. And until we really focus on changing our habits and the style, we can't really improve on what we do, because after all, habits and styles really lead to cause and effect of what we do. But the question is, how can we really change our habits? That's the question we want to answer. Well, it turns out that good habits just don't come from simply talking about it or just listening to somebody talk, but it's honed by very sincere, and I want to underline the word sincerity there, discipline and continuous and deliberate practice. And that's exactly what I've learned over the years is if I want to change something, I got to be really deliberate about it and continuous about it. So how could we possibly be deliberate about what we want to do, whether it is getting to become a better programmer or maybe just trying to change some habits that we have? Well, I'll share with you something really personal. It's a little gross, but I hope you don't mind me opening up some of my past experiences, personal experiences, so it can help us to get better at what we do. Well, I'm going to relate that back to programming as I normally do with a lot of things. And I'm going to say the practice of writing meaningless single letter variable names is like the habit of nail biting. I suffered from both habits for decades until conscious effort really helped me to change it. Well, let me talk about that, the nail biting aspect of it. I'm a bit embarrassed to say it, but I used to have a habit of biting nails. No, I was not just a casual nail biter. I was a compulsive nail biter. And I know, it's not hygienic, it doesn't look really good when you do it, and your hands don't look good at all when you bite your nails. I used to have it really extreme. My fingers would chap, they would sometimes bleed, it would hurt, but it didn't matter. That habit of biting the nail, I have no clue how I caught it, but it stayed with me. It was part of me. I'll be listening to something, I'll be reading a book, I'll be watching a movie. It doesn't matter, I was biting my nail. And at some point, as an adult, I realized that this is not going to be helpful. I really need to change it. But how do I really change an habit? I don't even know that I'm biting my nail like I'm writing bad code. And this is a sense we have to develop. And as I was struggling with this, I came to a realization that I can put an end to nail biting forever. And I'm very thankful that I actually did. And I know a lot of people, children and adults today, who have the habit of nail biting, and I always think of myself in their shoes at once upon a time. My fingers are not the most beautiful fingers, but they definitely don't have the problems I once used to have. But how do I really fix it? Well, the fixing really came from not only a realization, but a very deliberate practice as well. Well, sometimes we have to place ourselves in situations that encourage or even force us to do the right thing until doing the right thing becomes a habit. Well, what did I do to stop my nail biting? Well, I came to a realization that if this becomes a conscious effort, I would actually stop really biting my nails. So I said to myself, I'm not even kidding with you here, that every time, and this is where the sincere and discipline really comes in. And I said to myself, every single time I catch myself biting my nails, I would literally, doesn't matter where I am, I would literally get up, walk all the way to the restroom, wash my hands with soap, dry it, and come back and sit down. Oh boy, the time I decided to do it was a disaster. And I would be at my desk, I would be working, I would be studying, I would be reading. It doesn't matter. I would catch myself with my finger in my mouth. And immediately I would get up. I would walk all the way to the restroom, wash my hand, dry it, come back and sit down, only for 30 seconds to go. And I would be biting my nails again without me realizing. And this is again where the discipline and the sincerity comes in. There was never a time I said to myself, I'll let it slip by this time. Oh no, you need to walk back again and clean it up. And it only took a few days, honestly. And the more I did this, the brain started really changing the habit. And I once and for all quit biting my nails. Well, I applied this principle a lot to what I do in the rest of my life, including programming. I want to always improve what I do. For example, I might want to learn a shortcut as to be easy to navigate on my computer. Maybe I want to learn something different, learn something new, but a lot of times really bring in a certain habit. As an example, let's say for a minute that we are in the command prompt, and I'm going to say this is a test, and I realize, gosh, I typed this, but I want to change it. How do I do it? Well, I used to be that programmer, as a lot of people today are also, I would say brrr and keep deleting those words. And that looked really silly because I'm a programmer. I need to be able to use the machine in a better way. So what do? And it only takes a little bit of effort to say, hey, I'm going to learn the shortcuts to see how I can do it. But the problem is when you're sitting right there and you're writing your code or doing some work, it naturally is to do this. And when you do, as I did, what I decided was, no, I'm going to type that back in. I know that sounds absolutely silly. And yes, it is really silly. But the only way I can change my habits and bring in new habits is by being deliberate. So I would retype, when I do this, I would retype it to myself and say, nope. I'm going to now navigate to where I want to go. Oh, right there I am. And I'm going to say, oh, I can start changing the stuff now, delete it, and I can then say, oh, I'm going to modify that right there and change it. Similarly, I want to go to the beginning of the line. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to learn the shortcut. And again, every single time we do these habits, go back to where you are, reset the state, and then try it again. Oh, what if I want to delete this whole line? My fingers type that and I realize, oh no, that's not what I want to do. I'm going to retype that and use the shortcut to delete the line. So every single time when I decide that I want to replace a certain practices with other practices, I become extremely deliberate. And being deliberate about these practices have really helped me to replace bad habits with good habits, poor practices with better practices. And that is a journey. Every single day we can learn, but we also have to be deliberate about learning and changing our habits. Hope that was useful. Thanks for listening.